Hey everybody, Drew Dinkmeyer here of DailyRoto doing a cash game lineup review week one, keeping myself honest and keeping our subscribers aware that I am playing the projections just as you are on a week-to-week basis. So when the projections are going well, it's hopefully going well for a lot of us, and when the projections aren't doing as well, I'll be struggling just as well. So let's look back at week one and the cash game lineups. If you are unfamiliar with my cash game lineup making process, ultimately I lean heavily on the projections, but I do create multiple cash game lineups on a week-to-week basis, and it's usually small changes in cash game lineups with strong cores and then kind of 2v2 decisions. So as always, I start with our projections to really make cash game lineups, and this is for Fanduel. We'll start talking about Fanduel. I usually, I look at the quarterback position, and you'll see some of our highest projected values here. I'll always sort by the value column because it gives me a sense. In cash games, I'm really looking to build out from a value-centric perspective first, and then I'll kind of go through my process. I usually actually start at the running back position to see if there's any kind of cheap running backs available on a week-to-week basis. This week, James Conner really stood out. And this week, you see such a huge difference in the value projections for David Johnson, Alvin Kamara, and then the rest of the field. So right away, right off the bat, it looks like we're going to be team jam him in this week and trying to figure out how to do so. Michael Thomas is our top projected value wide receiver, also very expensive. At the tight end position, Gronk is just lapping the field in value projection. So it looks like it's going to be a week where I need salary relief, just kind of looking through our value section. In this one, the Saints, our #1 value defense, that certainly didn't go very well. But you've also got the Ravens right there and the Dolphins. And you don't see a huge gap, about a point in value projection. Whereas if you look at wide receiver, between the top guys, you got, about a point. That's not that big of a deal. You've got a number of targets there, but then at running back, we're talking 3 to 4 points of value. So I look through and just kind of scanning through the positions. I already kind of know where my builds are going to lead me, and it's going to be in the sense that I need some salary relief because I'm going to want to try to jam in David Johnson and Alvin Kamara. So let's look at some of the individual lineups that I ended up building. So this is the first lineup that I ended up building for a cash game lineup. You can see it did not cash. 61st out of 100 in this double up. Fell just short, and ultimately you'll see in both lineups that I created, you'll see a lot of similarities. Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Keelan Cole, Chris Hogan, big disappointment this week with Chris Hogan, Rob Gronkowski, David Johnson. They are in both of my cash game lineups. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 9 positions are exactly the same between the two. The other cash game lineup I had, which did cash, 174 points, is Dalton, Michael Thomas, and the Dolphins defense versus Tannehill, Stephon Diggs, and the Ravens defense. So a little bit of a difference there, but obviously Michael Thomas went absolutely ham and just kind of wiped the slate with the two decisions. But ultimately what you can see here is that I'm leveraging the strength of our projections. If you're talking about, Dalton and Tannehill, those are two of the cheaper quarterbacks. And if you look at our projections in terms of value, we've got Brady, who's expensive, Rivers, who's kind of mid-priced, and then Tannehill, Fitzpatrick, Dalton. Now, obviously, my own insecurities about Ryan Fitzpatrick and my struggles with Ryan Fitzpatrick, because I thought the Saints defense was going to play well, was a big mistake here. Normally when I'd hedge in this situation, it would be with two of our top values, and it was Tannehill and Dalton. But if I'd gone Tannehill and Fitzpatrick, obviously, just a much bigger difference in the end result there. In terms of the running backs, as I said, pretty clear cut for me, and using that flex position on the running back where you can see the values on the running backs are so much stronger than the wide receivers or the tight ends made a whole lot of sense this week for me. So, David Johnson, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, I had those guys locked in. I think Christian McCaffrey, Melvin Gordon, Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, fine tournament plays, but from a cash game perspective, these guys were really locked in for me. Easy lineup building process there. In terms of the wide receiver position, we know we needed salary relief. So when you're looking at all these, 8,500, 8,000, 9,000, 8,800, 8,400. Chris Hogan at 6,700 is one of the first cheap guys that comes up, and so is Keelan Cole at 4,500. And so as a result, Keelan Cole, I needed to make my lineups work. Had I, instead of Chris Hogan at 6,700, ventured over to Kenny Stills at 6,000, who was a little bit of a worse value, or Emmanuel Sanders at 6,300, much different result. Bruce Ellington was a pivot over Keelan Cole. for 100 more if I wanted to split those two, but had a little bit more confidence in Keelan Cole. And since he was cheaper, I ended up going in that direction. But you can see largely just relying on the projections. Gronk, for me, was a cash game must, given the huge advantage he was creating, especially on Fanduel, a touchdown scoring heavy site over the competition here. And then the defenses, I didn't see a lot of difference between the defenses. I did think the Ravens were a better cash game play than the Saints, even though the Saints projected a slightly better value. And then if I was going to go low at the position, the Dolphins, I was going to punt with them. They ended up getting a kick return touchdown that really drove their scoring. But that's it for FanDuel. So kind of a mixed result for me on FanDuel this week. Ended up overall losing a little bit on FanDuel as I didn't sweep cash games over there, and GPPs were a slight negative for me. Over on DraftKings, though, is where I had a really, really strong cash game week, and we'll take a look at the $25 double up here. This is where I had all 4 of the different cash lineups that I played. We'll start with the highest scoring one, which is the Fitzpatrick one. I got myself onto Fitzpatrick in cash on DraftKings simply because he was $5,000 over there. Really, really cheap. If you look at our value projections on DraftKings, he really stood out as the quarterback value to target. And I wish I had more confidence in him. It would have been a very different week for me. But when you're sorting by quarterback values, you can see Breeze, Brady, and then Fitzpatrick. But again, when you're going through all the different positions, you'll see so many of the strong values are the expensive guys. Once again, Johnson, Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Melvin Gordon, then James Conner. At the wide receiver position, it was Michael Thomas, Stephon Diggs, AJ Green, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Emmanuel Sanders. There weren't as many salary relief plays, so I felt you needed to go down at quarterback somewhat. So the Fitzpatrick lineups, just you built beautiful, beautiful skill position players. It allowed you to get Alvin Kamara, Emmanuel Sanders, Michael Thomas, Gronkowski, Christian McCaffrey. Bruce Ellington I used as a little bit of a punt here. I ended up splitting some exposure with Bruce Ellington and Keelan Cole. If you look at where the values ended up, Bruce Ellington came on our radar late when Kike Kute and Will Fuller were both ruled out. It just really tightened up the Texans wide receiver targets distribution. And then Keelan Cole was another one of the salary relief guys. As for Danny Amendola, Marquise Goodwin I really liked in tournaments. He had a donut, so that kind of hurt me in tournaments. I believe re-aggravated a hamstring injury. Always seems to be something with his health. And then Kenny Stills was another guy I used in some cash game iterations. But basically, you'll see the same kind of core in most of these cash game lineups. James Conner, Alvin Kamara, who I said in our podcast, I thought was a better cash game play than David Johnson because I thought there were fewer ways that the Saints offense could fail as a whole, whereas there were some ways Arizona's offense could fail as a whole, like new quarterback. Washington's defense I thought was a little bit underrated. So I was playing Kamara over Johnson in cash all week. Gronk I was trying to get Michael Thomas in everywhere I could. Christian McCaffrey I played on every team, and then Patriots defense, which was our cheapest defense on DraftKings, and I played them aggressively in cash because I needed the skill positions, the money for the skill positions. So you'll see, this is cash game lineup 1 that just went nuts. It had everything working for it. Cash game lineup 2 was about 30 points behind it, but the differences here were just Phillip Rivers, no Kamara on this one. This was the one lineup I played no Kamara. I built really balanced. So went Melvin Gordon, Christian McCaffrey. That allowed me to play Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and pay up for Rivers. So the differences between this lineup and the last one is basically Fitzpatrick and Kamara over Rivers and Gordon is the entire difference there. And then my cash game lineup 3, a little bit less, 11 points less, was Tannehill and Keenan Allen over the original one, which was Michael Thomas and Fitzpatrick, and that was a 40-point difference. But all the same guys here: Emmanuel Sanders, Bruce Ellington, Gronk, McCaffrey, Patriots D, Kamara in this one. And then my last cash game lineup, the weakest of the group, was at 219. This was Rivers, Connor, Kamara, Cole, Diggs. This is where I came down from the Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas route to go up to Rivers. So there, and then Kenny Stills over Emmanuel Sanders. So I got some Kenny Stills exposure in here as well. And so what you can see is a lot of consistency. I had Gronk, McCaffrey, Patriots in every lineup. And Connor. So Connor, Gronk, McCaffrey, Patriots. So 4 of my 9 positions were the same in every single lineup. I played Kamara in 3 of the 4. I played Michael Thomas in 3 of the 4. I played Keelan Cole in 1 or 2 of the 4, and then Bruce Ellington in the other 2. So same construction on all of these. And then I played Rivers in 2. I played Tannehill in 1 and Fitzpatrick in 1. Same construction on all of these. These are all among our top values at the positions, and it's just me cycling through a few of the different guys. Now, I chose Rivers over Breeze just because I had so much exposure to Kamara and Thomas already. I didn't necessarily need to add on to that in a cash game format, even though Breeze was the better value. But you see here, I played 3 of our top 5 values at the quarterback position in cash. In terms of the running back position, I was playing Kamara over DJ all week, and I said that because of the differences in the strengths of the offenses. And then McCaffrey was our 3rd, and Connor was our 5th best running back value. I loaded up on those guys in cash. At the wide receiver position, I was really trying to emphasize Michael Thomas. Look at this projected value gap between Michael Thomas and all the other receivers. He's got like a 3+ point advantage when you get 5 or 6 receivers down. You don't see that at any of the other positions. You see these are pretty tight all the way down in terms of the quarterback. The running backs are pretty tight, the first 5 or 6 down. So I really felt like I had to emphasize Michael Thomas in cash games. So I had him in 75%. I had one where I dipped down to Keenan Allen. I played some Diggs, who was right there. AJ Green just was a weird price, just didn't kind of fit the builds that I was trying to make. Emmanuel Sanders and Kenny Stills were in the 5K range. Those 2 guys were the top guys I was playing. And then at the cheap range, Ellington and Keelan Cole. And then at tight end, I played Gronk in every cash game lineup. I came around to, by the end of the week, feeling like, Gronk's not priced aggressively enough. The Patriots are down a bunch of players on their offense. This is the most sure thing at the position. There are some punts that are viable, but the floors are really low here. And we saw that with Ryan Griffin, who airballed, even though he had like 6+ targets and a bunch of end zone targets. Deshaun Watson was just really bad. Ricky Seals-Jones had 6 targets and played 90+% of snaps, but also had a low floor. And that was realized. Jack Doyle and Jordan Reed, a little bit better, but also playing the price tag. So loading up on Gronk was really a big difference maker for me in cash games this week. And then loading up on the Patriots D, who put together a big performance with their defensive line being able to pressure Deshaun Watson. Outside of that, it would have been Saints, Ravens, and Dolphins. And obviously, the Saints defense was just a huge landmine in our projections this week, where if you played them, it was a real struggle. The Bengals also here. Bengals and Dolphins both had defensive touchdowns in Washington. So the projections on the whole were in a really good spot this week. I was able to leverage them to create really strong cash game lineups. I swept all my cash games. Even my worst scoring lineup at 219.16 was a winner in all double-ups and a winner in all head-to-head contests. So the weeks won't always be this clean in terms of the projections really kind of hitting at all levels, but it was a great week for week 1 for our projections. We had some subscribers take home big tournaments. Shout out to Skip Bitter, who won the Fanduel Sunday Million, becoming our 6th subscriber or content producer to win the Fanduel or DraftKings Millionaire Maker. So 6 millionaires over at DailyRoto. We're really proud of the contributions we've been able to make, changing people's lives. And this week was a great one for the projections. So happy to review my cash game lineups. I'll be here every week kind of doing this, the good or the bad, sometimes the really ugly. We'll be sure to have those. This week could have been an even bigger week for me if I had trusted Ryan Fitzpatrick a little bit more, maybe trusted him a little bit more with FanDuel Cash, but also just in GPPs in general. But that'll do it for my cash game lineup review process. Hopefully this is helpful for those of you out there building cash game lineups and seeing how we leverage our own projections to make those decisions. All right, best of luck, everybody, and we'll see you next week.